Hi everyone, in today's video we are going to continue with our topics related to Al-Kalam, the Islamic Theology. We have already spoken about the different schools, as we mentioned before, the Mu'tazila, Al-Murjiya, Khawarij, and today we are going to talk briefly about the Ashariyyah. The Ashariyyah was a school that looked for a synthesis between the problematics that the Mu'tazila seem to have with the Al-Murjiya, and as we mentioned in the previous video, we were talking about the debates among the great Islamic scholars regarding the nature of God, the essence of God. We mentioned about how the Mu'tazila were the champions of the theology of human free will, meaning that for certain schools everything was determined by God, predestination, meaning that everything was in God's hands. But according to the Mu'tazila school, this presented a problem, because this implies that either the good side and the bad also is the, let's say, a result of God's actions or creation, meaning God is responsible for the good and for the bad. But this presented a problem regarding the justice of God. And according to the Mu'tazila, human beings have free will. Everything is not determined or predetermined by God, but humans are responsible for their actions. Therefore, they can be held accountable when they commit sins. And this way we can explain the evil that we see in the world. Now, again, this created certain tension between these two different views, the one with absolute free will and the other one that was implying that God predetermined or determined everything, meaning that we are talking about here what is called the omnipotence of God, meaning God is all powerful and in control of everything, meaning that He's also responsible for the good and for the bad. The Mu'tazila said no, He cannot be responsible for the bad, but humans are responsible. But if humans are responsible and are able to act independently from God, this is a way of limiting God's power. And this was the problematic between these two schools of Islamic theology. Now, around the 9th century and 10th century, we have a very important figure. We have that a solution arrived, and that solution came through a great scholar. He was a Mu'tazilite that, in fact, he separated from the Mu'tazilite school. His name, Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari. Al-Ash'ari was a great Iraqi scholar, and he found like a synthesis between these two ways of thinking. According to Al-Ash'ari, he complained, or he argued against the Mu'tazila, that the Mu'tazila school emphasized too much and put too much trust in human way of thinking. Meaning, according to Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari, the Mu'tazila school was trying or putting too much trust in human intellectual thinking, meaning that humans, even though you can try as much as hard as you want, you will never be able to really understand God's essence, God's nature. Therefore, you have a limited capacity of knowledge, let's say incomplete way of thinking, to really comprehend God's essence. And therefore, you cannot judge God's ethical behavior regarding how God applies His justice in the world. You can do everything you want, but it's impossible with a limited human way of thinking to really comprehend an unlimited being, uncreated, as Allah, as God in this case. Therefore, something very interesting that the Al-Ash'ari utilize also Greek way of thinking, methods of thinking, in order to counterattack the thinking, the rationalist thinking of the Mu'tazila. And this was a method that was later on employed by employed by Imam al-Ghazali and even by great Jewish thinkers at the time, such as Yehuda Halevi, among others. Since the Mu'tazilite school utilized Greek thinking, then Al-Ash'ari utilized also Greek thinking to counterattack the Mu'tazilite way of thinking. And we, according to his approach, he developed the doctrine of acquisition. According to Al-Ash'ari, God created good actions and bad actions. Everything was created by God. But human beings, because of their will, attach to themselves either the good or the bad. Meaning the good path is right there, the bad path is right there. Humans are the ones that have the will to decide which way to follow. Therefore, God is responsible. I mean, He created both ways, the evil and the bad, the good and the bad. But humans are the ones that ultimately decide which way to go. That way, God is not responsible. Humans are responsible. But with this way, we can explain the evil in the world, and we can explain how God can judge human beings right in the righteous way. Meaning, this is an intermediate position between the Mu'tazilite and the other school of that hold that God determined everything, that Allah was in fact determining all human actions. And according to the Al-Ash'ari, he in fact used to explain, and his teachings come from the view that all the human beings have free will and they can act. Nevertheless, God is in control. He knows everything. And even though humanity can think independently, nevertheless does not create. So ultimately God is in control of everything, but as we can see, there's a reconciliation, there's a middle path according to Al-Ash'ari, his school of thought, and the Mu'tazila and the other different schools of thought of the great of all the different mutakallimun, which are the Islamic theological thinkers. And Al-Ash'ari also solved the problem of the unity of God relating or in light of the divine attributes. He also solved the problem between reward and punishment, the question of divine speech, as we already spoken before regarding the word of Allah, the Quran, if it's taken literally as literally the Quran, the word of God, if the Quran was created or was uncreated. We spoke already about this in the previous video. And Al-Ash'ari brilliantly solved these contradictions between the different schools of thought and theology within Islam. His school and his followers, his school of thought, even though some people of course did not agree with them in everything, but this school of theology had great influence, and they were known as the Ashariyyah. The Ashariyyah school of Islamic theology that continued to have an important influence until this very day. Besides, we have to say that many other schools of thought of Kalam and great thinkers, mutakallimun, in fact continue to develop throughout the ages because of the different interactions between Islamic thinkers with other monotheistic religions, but also with science and changes, interaction with cultures, and we have different school of thoughts that appear later on in history, and this kind of approach of course even continues up to the present. We have to say that Imam Abu al-Hassan al-Ash'ari was known as Imam al-Mutakallimun, the Imam of the theological thinkers within Islam. So we have an idea here of his influence, his thought, his school, his methodology, how important until this very day is within the Islamic way of thinking. This was all for today's video. In the next video we are going to continue with this line of topic regarding the development of Islamic theology. We are going to talk about Islamic philosophy and the philosophers that came with their approach, and different arguments and debates that continue to develop up to this very present day within Islam. Thank you so much for your attention, and we'll see you again in the next video.